This just in per ESPN and Anthony Slater. The Warriors have a done deal with Jonathan Kuminga if they remove that team option and instead make it a player option, giving Jonathan Kuminga control of his third year. He said it would be a done deal, that Kuminga would be down with the mission, getting Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and company number 5, Jimmy Butler number 1. He's down to play ball. He's going to be ready for whatever mission they ask of him, but he needs that third year. The Warriors have remained steadfast that they will not remove that team option, so we'll see what happens. The game of hardball keeps on, but we're getting reports. It means we may be nearing the end. Before Matt Kolsky and myself got this news, we recorded an episode on the whole saga, still very much relevant. Here we go.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
What are they going to say now?
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Locked On Warriors. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Visit FanDuel.com. My name's Charlie Walter, formerly at 95.7 The Game in the Bay Area. That's the flagship radio station. Cover the team for CBS News Bay Area. Matt Kolsky, KNBR, 95.7 The Game formerly. We team up today, former coworkers, now on YouTube or wherever you get your audio podcasts, to break down strictly Jonathan Kuminga, Joe Lacob, Steve Kerr. I'm missing his agent's name off the top of my head right now. Aaron Turner. I've said it 600 times, and Mike Dunleavy as well. Those are the only parties. Maybe Josh Giddey's thrown in or something because of his contract. Aside from that, I think those are the only parties we're talking about on today's show, spinning this thing every way possible, trying to figure out what each party wants and why we cannot come to a deal. The numbers, if you have not heard yet, floated out: $72 million over 3 years, 2 years guaranteed, 1 year. Actually, that third year, I should say, would be a team option. Kuminga's camp wants a player option. $48 million would be guaranteed. $8 million is on the table for the qualifying offer, which Jonathan Kuminga is still tempting to take. Now, Kolsky, I've seen so many comments coming in saying, good, he doesn't want to play for Steve Kerr. He wants to control his own destiny. And I get that. But if you take the qualifying offer, that's the only guarantee that you're playing for Steve Kerr all season. They want to trade him. He in this sit-down meeting, apparently, he said, do you even want me? Do you want to be here? That's what's being thrown around. It's just very confusing what both parties want. You're a sensical man. Try to break it down for me.
Okay. Let me set the scene for you, because I spent this weekend out of pocket, out of town, flying around doing hippie stuff at a fish show. And so when you texted me, that was the first I had heard of the Jonathan Kuminga, the newest report. We finally, listen, here's the good news. We finally have new news to discuss, right? It's not the same old nonsense, although I did see like people breathlessly reporting trade offers we heard about a month and a half ago. But this new 2 guaranteed years with the third a team option offer, and Kuminga and his agent's response of, well, we'd prefer just a 1-year deal at a similar number, where at the end of the season, if we don't get traded, we're restricted free agents, right? Now at least we're negotiating. And when you first texted me, I didn't totally understand the response offer from Kuminga and his camp. And after I've read into it a little more, I am, look, I was confused and annoyed and thinking, all right, what the heck? If, you know, now we were talking about with 1 year guaranteed, you know, $15 to $18 million that he would be leaving on the table.
Now we're talking 40.
Now we're talking $40 million. And, you know, my thought was, look, I get it from Kuminga's perspective. I get feeling disrespected and wanting, it's the first time in his career he has any control over what's happening. He wants to maintain as much control as possible. I understand that in theory. I can't understand leaving $40 million on the table, especially when, in those 2 guaranteed years of the contract, if things continue to go the way they have, there's no question he's going to be traded, right? It's going to happen sometime in the next 2 years if things continue down the track they're on. I don't understand turning that down, right? That was my thought. Now that I see that their response is like, listen, the response offer they gave includes a significant concession. So what we just had happen in the broadest terms is after months of nothing and not talking to each other, we have this sit down where reportedly
hardball worked.
Yeah, the Warriors on one side say, hey, do you even want to be here? And Jonathan Kuminga, very reasonably, I would argue, says, do you even want me here? Right? And they say, who knows what came next in that conversation, because that part hasn't been reported.
They left that part out, right?
But from a contract perspective, they say, you know what? We want you here enough to guarantee a second year. Just let us control the third one, because ultimately what that team option does whenever it happens is it avoids the one scenario that Joe Lacob appears to be unwilling to deal with, which is losing Jonathan Kuminga for nothing, right? And Kuminga's side says, okay, I guess you are showing some love to us, so let us show you some love. You can pay us the same rate, more or less. We'll negotiate a 1-year rate. And if you find a trade, great. If not, at the end of the year, unrestricted, and I'm in control of my own destiny. And I can understand, of course, the Warriors don't want to do that, right? Because, again, Joe Lacob's main thing seems to be we're not losing him for nothing.
But what do you mean losing him for nothing? Because if you trade him at the deadline, let's say, and he's making $25 million and you attach another deal to that potentially, you can get up to $30 million, return a really nice player that could potentially take this team over the top if they're right there.
I agree. What I mean is, what I think Joe Lacob means is I am not going to open myself up to a situation where that trade does not happen. And at the end of the year, we have no rights or abilities to maintain.
What's the qualifying
value? The qualifying offer is like $8 million.
No, I'm saying the qualifying offer, you lose him for nothing. It's the same thing.
100%. No. And that's why I've always maintained the Warriors are not going to let that happen. Right? Which I think is why they had finally increased their offer. I say all of this to say that I was poring over this, and last night I had a sit and a think, and I took some deep breaths, and I've decided to view this as the beginning of the end of negotiations, because nobody wants the qualifying offer. Right? We've talked about it. I have said, and I still believe, it's more damaging to the Warriors as a franchise than it is to Jonathan Kuminga as a human. But nobody wants it. And especially now that we're talking about $40 million on the table. So I look at it, instead of saying, oh gosh, they're still so far apart and they're asking each other if they even want to date over the table, I look at this and say, both sides have made concessions for the first time in months. We're finally moving towards something. And I expect that if we talk, it's just a little over 2 weeks from today that training camp opens. I expect this will be taken care of. I have more belief now that this will be finished with Jonathan Kuminga in a Warrior uniform for at least the next few months than I have in a long time. And I just think the fact that they sat down, the fact that, look, sometimes it's good to air some of that stuff out. Even if, do you want to be here? Do you even want me here? Is kind of an unpleasant conversation. Sometimes you got to say that stuff to move forward. Like, you just got to put some dudes in front of each other and let them have it out. And maybe we can move forward from that. Because one of the problems with the Kuminga situation is it's been really hard to move forward from anything at any point, because there's never been much clarity to what's going on, whether that's about his playing time or his contract. So I am choosing to view this as a positive. Things are moving in what I think is the right direction. Both sides are making concessions, and I have a lot of hope that this will be done in the next week and a half.
All right, let's get into all the angles, all the sidebars from this entire ongoing process. Joe Lacob and the trip down to Miami, how this kind of compares to the golf outing that he had with Klay Thompson last summer, why Steve Kerr wasn't in the room, why the offer wasn't enough for the Warriors, why it wasn't enough for Kuminga, and potential solutions. That is what is straight ahead on Locked On Warriors. First, let's tell you about our sponsor, 5-Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere, and you get that boost when you need it. I have great flavors that I love. The blue raspberry, excellent. So enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in-store and online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Now, let's get back to the show. The conversation that Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy had with Aaron Turner and Jonathan Kuminga down in Miami kind of brings me back to last summer before Klay Thompson eventually would be not re-signed by the Golden State Warriors or extended, and he was involved in that sign and trade, that 16 sign and trade that brought in Buddy Hield and Kyle Anderson. It's kind of similar to how Joe Lacob comes down there trying to think that he can be the problem solver. His voice is going to make the difference. And then we kind of walk away with nothing. Now, in this situation, if that question was answered, do you want to be here? Do you even want me here? If we got some form of an answer, maybe it's a different conversation we're having right now, but they left that part out to where we don't know where both parties stand, because Kuminga hasn't necessarily turned down the offer, right? He just hasn't accepted it yet.
Yeah. Okay. I think this is the Klay thing is perfect to bring up here, because this is kind of exactly how I see it, right? Let's say this is all imaginary. For just disclaimer, I'm about to do a bunch of imaginary nonsense, but imaginary nonsense I believe in. Thank you very much. Let's imagine that Joe and Klay are on the 3rd hole, right? Actually, that's probably not smart. Let's make it like the 17th hole. Joe's smart enough to let it rest until they're almost off the course. They've had a really nice day on the links, right? Klay's 3 under. It's the best round of his life. Okay, enough about that. At some point, Joe's like, all right, let's talk about this contract situation. We love you, buddy. You're a hero here, and one day you're going to have a statue outside the building. I love you to death, and we'd love to bring you back, but we just don't necessarily have maybe quite the money that you're asking for. It's not going to work for us. And then Klay goes, do you even want me here? I think Joe, in response to Klay saying that, would go, yeah, no, totally. We want you here.
Let's just figure everything else out first. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, we want you here. Yeah. But we don't maybe want you to start. And I'm not sure we can guarantee that you'll be getting as much playing time as Brandon Pajemski. And listen, if you do want to go somewhere else, we totally understand, and we'd love to work with you to make that happen in a way that honors your contribution to this franchise. That's the response to that, okay? In my head, when Joe says, hey, listen, man, do you want to be here? And Kuminga says, do you even want me here? This is what Joe Lacob says, okay? Absolutely, I want you here. I believe that you are the future of my franchise. Listen, in 3 years, all these old dudes are going to be gone. And the only thing I see in the building that could be an answer to that problem is you. And I believe in you, and I want you here. Now, I don't know how to make that work right now. I understand you have desires for your career, and I can't make any guarantees because I'm not going to tell Steve Kerr how to coach. But believe, I want you here, and I would love it if you are leading this franchise when Steve and Steph and Draymond and Jimmy are all on television. And those are very different answers to me. You know, that's where I believe Joe Lacob's head is at. Now, I don't know if that's going to be possible. I think in all likelihood it's not. But that's what I think Joe Lacob wants, and that's what I think Joe Lacob said. You know? And maybe no one's willing to report that, but that's what I would guess came out of Joe Lacob's mouth. Right?
It'll all come out after.
It'll eventually come out, yes. And I would think that Kuminga would say, well, if that's what's going to happen, that doesn't sound so bad. But I don't know if I believe that's going to happen, right? And in the meantime, I don't really want to be jerked around by this dude that has sort of stepped on my career at every possible turn. So I don't know that that solves the problem. But I would bet money that that when Jonathan Kuminga asked if Joe Lacob wanted him there, he got an answer that was a good one from his perspective.
Okay. So there's a lot of different things to break down here, but I want to kind of talk about the worst case scenarios of Jonathan Kuminga potentially taking this deal. So he gets 2 years, $48 million guaranteed, team option for the third, a total of $75.2 million if all his cards break out right. Now, let's say he is traded mid-season. Worst case scenario for him would be somehow over these next 2 years, the Warriors keep jerking him around and don't trade him. And I guess from Kuminga's camp and from his perspective, the Steve Kerr saying, we're going to let you run with Jimmy and Steph and Draymond early, which to me makes me feel like, okay, they are going to boost his value, and then they would use him as a trade chip at some point in the next 8 months, and likely in the next 4 months, you would have to think. So that's my logic. So, okay, if you take the qualifying offer, you're stuck on the Warriors for the rest of the year. You don't control anything because at the end of the day, we saw that when push came to shove, playoff time, the team wants to win, you weren't on the floor. So how do you get away from the Warriors as quickly as possible? I mean, if you truly think you're going to be traded because you asked, do you even want me here? And it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that he is a trade chip, it's accepting. So worst case scenario, let's say he gets traded to what's the worst market in the NBA? New Orleans?
No,
Charlotte?
the people keep making this mistake. I've heard this from smart people who know basketball.
Can I keep going?
Well, just give me a second because this is important before you talk about the bad markets that he might go to. I don't think he'd worry at all about a bad market. I think the concern would be, like, who do the Warriors want? Right? If they're trying to replace Jonathan Kuminga, they know they're not getting that talent level back. They're going to be looking for a highly professional, proven winner type of player. And those guys are mostly on good teams. And I think Jonathan Kuminga's worst case scenario would not be Charlotte or New Orleans. It would be Denver. It would be somebody else who wanted him to be Sean frickin' Marion, right? That's the problem for him. I'm not
going to do that,
right
though.
or wrong.
Do you think anyone would actually do that?
I don't know. It depends what it is, right? If somebody has, it just depends. It depends on injuries. It depends on so many different things. His
perfect
right?
scenario right now is Sacramento. That's where he'd like to go. And to me, it seems like not really a place that he would mesh in. There's a bunch of guys right now that demand the ball.
But none of them have distinguished. All of them are either old or have failed to distinguish themselves in any particular way. So he steps into a role immediately. And I imagine that his interest in Sacramento comes from whatever they told him about what his role would be. You know what I'm saying? And that's my point. He's not trying to get to New York right? He's not trying to win. He's not trying to get to a big market. He's trying to stretch his wings. And I don't think the problem is most of the teams where he would stretch his wings are filled with players the Warriors also would not be interested in, right? Like, he doesn't want to go to Miami and have Pat Riley, up his butt telling him exactly how to behave. He doesn't want to do that. So I understand the point that, like, why would he care about controlling anything no trade wise? But I just think people are viewing it wrong. Most players care about that so they don't get sent to Charlotte, perhaps. He cares about his opportunity for his career right now. At least that's my read on the scenario. Okay. So I think it's fear of being sent to a team that puts him in a role he doesn't want.
Fair. Coming up, how do we feel that this situation is going to unfold? The likely scenario, how we can get a deal done. Matt Kolsky and myself debate. That's coming up on Locked On Dubs. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because the options are limitless. Player props. You want a return on investment that may take a while? How about futures bets, live lines, over-unders, big-time money line favorites if you're feeling good, big-time underdogs at plus 350 if you're feeling very, very good. So you're ready to play. Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download that app. Visit FanDuel.com. The other part of this is money. And I've seen so many people, and appreciate the comments on the show as always, whether you agree, whether you disagree. That's what makes the world go around. Conversation. And I've seen so many people say the money does not matter in any of this. He's going to make his money, whatever. There's no guarantee until you sign that fully guaranteed contract, which he could have done, it sounds like, a week ago, and had $48 million guaranteed. Throw that thing in a high yield savings account. You, your family, their kids and grandkids, they're most likely set for life with that interest that's coming in. Set for life. Yep. $8 million does not do that. Now, you can't always think worst case scenarios, but things happen, from Sean Livingston to Isaiah Austin to Brandon Roy to Jay Williams. It's not just Achilles or a knee. Like, sometimes there are just freak things that happen in life. And to me, you set yourself up financially first if it makes sense. And to me, it makes sense because regardless of wherever he goes to Miami and he's under Pat Riley. Oh my, that sucks, right?
Well,
he's got to live in South Beach. Oh, okay. Yes. So worst case scenario, he becomes an unrestricted free agent. I guess the team option, that's what would be holding him up because he doesn't want that third year. But even then, we're talking 25 years of age or something,
right?
To where he's already secured all the money that he needs in the world. And it's basketball focus from there. And I would think that the team that trades for him has serious plans for him, or it doesn't make sense. Like, New York's not going to bring him in. Why would they?
No. I totally agreed. I'm trying to understand what his side is thinking, right? And this is actually why I'm so encouraged right now, is what you're just saying, right? Is that ultimately the worst case scenarios, right? There's a few that we could compare, but fundamentally, some of them guarantee him $8 million and some of them guarantee him $48 million. And however bad look, all the worst case scenarios are still pretty good for any normal person. Yeah. And the one with $40 million more dollars guaranteed to be in your bank account, even if it's 20 after tax, that's the one. You'd have to be an idiot ultimately, right? So I don't think, for the first time, I kind of don't think the qualifying offer threat is credible anymore. But it exists in the world of leverage just enough to continue the negotiations. So if I had to guess, the easiest place for this to end up, I think, is with a 2-year deal and no option at all. And I feel like it's as much philosophical as anything that Kuminga and his camp don't want the team option, right? Because at the end of the day, I think if I'm Mike Dunleavy, I say, listen, Joe, I know you don't want to lose JK for nothing. Okay, I get that. I get you don't want the deal to just end without a team option. But if we can't trade this kid in the next 2 years, he has no value. And like, if he ends up becoming an unrestricted free agent after 2 years, it's because he's not good. Right? We'll get it done one way or another. Either the 2 years will go surprisingly well and we'll extend him before he expires, or it won't and we'll trade him, or he's not worth fretting over. But if it's a 2-year guarantee, then Kuminga has what he wants. He has the theoretical unrestricted free agency afterwards, and the Warriors have 2 years to deal with the problem, which is just like, it's already been 2 years of basically testing the waters on trading him. Again, if you can't get it done in that time frame, you have nobody to blame but yourself. And I understand circumstances have sort of conspired against them in some of these ways, right? The moment you probably could have traded him for the most value, he was hurt. Like, weird things have happened. A lot of weird stuff has gone on with this guy's career. But a 2-year deal gives the Warriors plenty of time to either re-ingratiate themselves to the player and involve him in what they're doing, or find a deal for him that makes sense to both sides. And it also gives Jonathan Kuminga a ton of guaranteed money and at least the appearance and the theory of maintaining that control of unrestricted free agency when the deal ends. Because if Kuminga is willing to concede to waiving the no trade for a 1-year deal, why not do it for a 2-year deal, right? And if the Warriors don't, the way I would view it from Kuminga's side is like, it no longer serves them to jerk him around. They're running out of time to win something with Steph Curry. If they don't think Jonathan Kuminga can be a part of that, then they need to move on from him as quickly and successfully as possible to get whoever they think can be a part of winning with Steph Curry in here. So it doesn't serve anybody at this point for Kuminga to be jerked around or benched consistently. They need to either put him on display for trade or find a way to make him work with what they have. Otherwise, they're wasting valuable time in Steph Curry's career. And honestly, people have been accusing the Warriors of that for years, and I've never totally bought it. Like, think about if James Wiseman was a bad draft pick. He did not pan out. But think about if he had, he'd be like 6 years in now. And how valuable would a dual threat center 6 years in now be to Steph Curry, right? Those things were never anti-Steph Curry. But right now, having a major salary slot and like talented player that you are not really using, taking up space, both like mentally and emotionally and financially, that's wasting. That's wasteful.
Yeah.
So I don't expect it to continue.
There was a 3-year fully guaranteed offer on the table, but it was $54 million. So at $18 million per year. Kuminga said, nope, I'm in the camp of, basically it'd be 30 per year he'd be looking for if there was the team option at the end. So instead of the $24 million, it would have to be 30 to get it done on that deal.
Yeah, but the reason I think a 2-year deal at the, mid-20s number works is part of the reason the Warriors don't want to do a third guaranteed year is that they don't want to guarantee anything past the career of Steph Curry, right? Mm-hmm. So like right now, they want the books dead, totally clear, other than, whoever they just drafted.
And Moses Moody.
And Moses Moody and Buddy Hield. Yeah. But those are, those contracts don't matter in the grand scheme of things of getting your books under control. When Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy expire, they want to be able to reset. And they don't want to be committed to $25 million for Jonathan Kuminga, which is fair. And I think Jonathan Kuminga understands that. So, 3 years, 18 would have made that manageable. He's not going to do that because that affects, if he does get traded, what he can extend for. So he's really got to get up into the mid-20s so that if he does get traded and signs an extension, it's based on the current salary, as I understand it.
So you believe it's going to be that 2-year deal? I would have thought for sure the Warriors would have just said that 1-year deal. And I'm sure that there's something apron wise to where they couldn't do a $27-28 million 1-year deal. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, why would you give Kuminga 28? He's not worth 28. If someone's willing to pay him that amount of money, then you can attach Moses Moody to it, get a $40 million player at the deadline. Then it gets into the situation where he's an expiring contract. There'd have to be some sort of, signage as that trade went down, or else he's useless. So that's a nuance that I don't know if it affected their decision there. But before you look into that, you would just think, hey, 1 year, 25, 26 million. Let's do it. Let's trade him at the deadline, expiring contract. Great.
They weren't explicit, but the implication in the article, the Shams and Slater article, the implication was that Joe Lacob nixed that specifically because he was not willing to put himself in a situation where if they don't trade him this year, they lose him for nothing, which again is why I think the 2-year deal is where this lands. Yeah. Because Kuminga and company seem determined to say, if there's a team option, you need to take us up to 30 million, and the Warriors are not going to do that.
No,
and not. The Warriors seem determined to say, we're not going to put ourselves in a situation where something happens and we can't trade you mid-season and you walk away for nothing at the end of the year, right? And part of that is because they can't afford to lose. If that happens, they lose the ability to sign a player at the 20-something value to put next to Butler and Steph and Draymond in order to keep that salary slot open because of their tax situation. They need to have somebody signed in that salary slot, which is why, again, if I had to guess, and also I'm crossing my fingers and hoping this is what happens, this will all be done in a week and a half with a 2-year, approximately $49 million deal.
I do think that the qualifying offer, after reading this article, because I thought that, maybe he may take it the distance and do this whole qualifying offer thing. I don't think that's happening anymore. I think it would get to the point where 12th hour, they would get on the phone and they'd figure out something. Because if Joe Lacob's turning down the 1-year ballooned offer deal, waiving the no trade clause, they're basically accepting the fact that, hey, we're going to be traded. We'll scratch your back if you scratch ours. We're all happy here. If they turned down that and he wound up going the qualifying offer route, that's a big time jab by Kuminga. And at the end of the day, it's his decision. It's the Warriors' decision not to make any deals that they don't want to make. And that would be kind of worst case scenario where it's like, really? You guys turned down a much better situation for the qualifying? Like, what are we doing here? So I would have to think that, especially face to face, that they kind of know Kuminga's poker face a little bit, that they know where he's going with this, and that at the very least, they would have to cave in a little bit and take one of these deals that maybe Kuminga's camp floated.
The bottom line is, it seems like, as you sort of alluded to, the back scratchers have come out finally.
Yes.
Right? There's been posturing and staring contests and also a lot of nothing all summer long. And finally, we've at least, zipped open the carriers, and the back scratchers have come to the table. Like, the back scratchers are no longer inside their cases. They're out, and it looks like we're ready to use them and get this thing finished. And then we can officially tell you who's on the Warriors roster for the upcoming season, for which training camp begins in 13 days. I mean, come on, people, let's get this moving.
Yeah. And Malcolm Brogdon, who was Warriors target, will not be a member of the team. He's going to be on the New York Knicks this upcoming season. So we think we know who it's going to be.
Let me just say that's okay with me. I like Brogdon. It's nothing against Brogdon. They got plenty of guards. They're going to be okay on that.
Seth Curry, D'Anthony Melton, Al Horford. Those are the names we've heard consistently, and we really haven't heard anyone else. So we'll see what happens here. You see an Al Horford signing from another team, then it's kind of like, what? But until that happens, all indications are that Horford will be on the Warriors. Kolsky, good stuff, man. Let's talk soon.
Yes, sir.
This is Locked On Warriors. This is Locked On Warriors. Free and available wherever you get your audio podcasts and on YouTube. See you, everyone.